Hi there, welcome to Clear Talk English, your space to learn real, everyday English. Slow, simple, and easy to understand. Let's talk, laugh, and grow together. Sometimes I feel nervous when I need to talk about myself in English. Just small things like my name or what I do suddenly feel hard. Does that ever happen to you, Thomas?
Oh, yes, all the time. I think even native speakers sometimes feel that way. But it's interesting, right? Because talking about ourselves is something we do every day in our own language. English is just a little different.
Exactly. And it's not just the words, it's the way we feel. Like, will I sound interesting? Will people understand me? That's where many learners get stuck.
Yes, and I think the first thing is to relax. Just imagine you're talking to a friend, not a teacher, not an exam. When we relax, words come easier.
I love that. So maybe we can start with something really simple. Thomas, how do you usually start talking about yourself in English?
I usually start with my name and a simple sentence about what I do. For example, hi, I'm Thomas. I work in marketing. Very short, very clear.
Yes, short and clear, that's so important. And I tell learners it's okay to repeat simple things, like I'm Thomas, I like reading, I enjoy cooking. Little by little, you give information, and it builds confidence.
Exactly. And you can add small details, something personal, like I love coffee in the morning. It wakes me up. That's natural. People like to hear little stories.
Oh, stories. That's a big tip. You don't have to explain everything perfectly. Just share a tiny story about your day, your hobby, even your weekend.
Yes, stories make English feel alive. Like yesterday, I tried a new recipe. I burned it a little, but it was fun. And I can tell that story in English. Very simple sentences. I tried a new recipe. It burned a little, but I liked it.
Perfect example. And learners can relate. Everyone has small things like that, mistakes or funny moments. It makes talking about yourself easier, less scary.
Also, don't worry if you don't know the perfect word. You can describe it simply. Like, instead of saying, I enjoy gastronomy, you can say, I like cooking food and trying new recipes. Very simple, and people understand.
Yes, simple words, short sentences, tiny pauses. It's natural, and the listener can follow you. Sometimes learners try to make long sentences, but it's better to keep it short and real.
And you can always add feelings. Like, I like cooking because it makes me happy. Just one word about feeling. Suddenly, your story is alive.
Exactly, and feelings are universal. Everyone understands happy, sad, excited, even if your English is simple.
I also like to ask questions back. Like after I talk about myself, I say, do you like cooking? That makes conversation flow. It's not only me talking.
Yes, that's key. Conversation is not a monologue. Sharing small bits about yourself, then inviting the other person to share, that's real life English.
And listeners can practice this at home. Start with one sentence about yourself, then one question to a friend, slowly, step by step.
Let's try that. For example, I can say, I love morning walks. It makes me feel calm. How about you, Thomas?
I love morning walks too, but I'm more of a tea person in the morning, sitting with my cup, thinking about my day.
See, that was easy, natural, and only simple sentences. Little stories, feelings, questions. That's all.
Yes, and you can add one more tip, maybe about hobbies. Hobbies are easy to talk about because they're personal and fun.
True, hobbies are perfect. Learners can start with, I like reading books. My favorite book is, or I like football. I play every weekend. Very easy.
And small details make it more interesting. Like instead of just, I like football, you can say, I like football. I play with my friends on Saturdays. We laugh a lot.
Exactly. Little details, short sentences, feelings, questions. That's the formula for easy, natural English about yourself.
And it's okay to pause sometimes. Silence is natural. You don't have to rush. It gives you time to think and makes the conversation calm.
Yes, slow speech, calm pace. Learners should practice that. Don't try to speak like a machine or someone very fluent at first. Focus on clarity. Exactly. Confidence is tiny step by tiny step, not one big leap.
So, listeners, if you try one sentence about yourself today, then one small story, you're already learning. It's real life practice, not boring repetition.
Yes, and we can do some examples together, shall we?
Sure, I love examples.
Okay, I start. I enjoy music. I listen to it every evening. It relaxes me. What about you, Thomas?
I enjoy music too, but I also like singing. I sing in the shower, and sometimes my cat listens.
That's perfect. Short, natural, personal, and funny. Listeners remember that.
Yes, and it's real. You don't need complicated sentences to tell your story. Simple words, feelings, tiny humor. It works.
Exactly. That's the heart of natural English about yourself. And I think we could keep going with more real life situations.
Yes, like talking about your family, your day, or even a recent experience.
Exactly. Each topic is another chance to practice, slowly, clearly, naturally. So, let's talk about family. That's something everyone can relate to. Thomas, how do you usually talk about your family in English?
I keep it simple. I say, I have a small family. I live with my parents and my sister. We like spending time together. Short sentences, easy to remember.
Yes, simple, clear, and personal. And learners can add one small story, like, yesterday we watched a movie together. It was fun. That's enough to make the conversation natural.
Exactly. You don't need long explanations. One or two sentences about daily life, that's real English.
And feelings, small emotions, are important. For example, I love my sister. She makes me laugh every day. Simple words, big effect.
Yes, and questions back help the conversation flow. After I say, I have a sister, I can ask, do you have siblings?
Exactly. That invites the listener, makes it interactive, even in a podcast.
And daily routines are great too. Like, I wake up at 7 a.m., I drink coffee, and go for a walk. Very simple sentences, but listeners understand your life.
Yes, and learners can practice that every morning. Just describe your day slowly in English, step by step. I eat breakfast, I go to work, I meet friends. That's already practice.
And tiny stories make it more interesting. Like, I went to the park yesterday. I saw a little dog. It was very cute. Short, simple, and feels real.
Exactly. Little details, tiny feelings, it's enough. And learners don't need perfect grammar at this stage, just clarity.
Yes, and also talking about challenges or mistakes is helpful. It's natural. I can say, yesterday, I tried a new recipe. It didn't turn out well, but I learned something.
Perfect. And it shows honesty. People like hearing real experiences. Plus, you can repeat simple structures to practice.
Another tip I love, talking about your city or neighborhood. It's easy and safe. Like, I live in Dhaka. It's busy, but exciting. I like walking in my street.
Yes, and small stories work here too. Yesterday, I bought tea from a street shop. The tea was very good. Short, clear, relatable.
Exactly. And if learners add one feeling, it's even better. The tea was very good. I felt happy. One word about emotion, simple, effective.
Also, hobbies can be combined with daily life. Like, I like running. I run in the morning. It makes me feel strong. Short sentences, small story, feeling, everything in one.
Yes, and you can ask the listener or in conversation, do you like running? That keeps it interactive.
Small questions, tiny pauses, slow pace, that's how English feels natural. Not rushed, not forced, calm and friendly.
And we can also talk about dreams or plans. Like, I want to learn photography. I would try next weekend. Very short, very clear, easy to remember.
Yes, and small steps make it real. Learners can practice saying their plans every day. I will try this, I will do that. Simple future tense. Very practical.
And little personal opinions are helpful too. I like movies. I don't like horror movies. Short, simple, listeners understand.
Yes, opinions give personality. You don't need long sentences, just short, clear statements. And one feeling word. I like comedy. It makes me laugh.
Exactly. And sometimes learners...
Yes, short, clear sentences. And you can add a tiny story, like, yesterday I helped a client. It was challenging, but I felt proud. One feeling word makes it real.
Exactly. And learners can start like this. One sentence about what they do, one small story, one feeling, then maybe one question.
Yes, for example, I am a teacher. I teach English. I enjoy seeing my students smile. What do you do? Simple, natural, interactive.
And mistakes at work or school are great topics too. They're real. I made a mistake in my report yesterday. I felt nervous, but I fixed it. Short sentences, feelings, very practical.
Yes, honesty makes English more natural. We all make mistakes, and learners can share them without fear. Short sentences, feelings, tiny story, perfect practice.
Also, talking about daily routines at work or school is very helpful. I wake up at 7, I eat breakfast, I go to work, I meet my colleagues. Very short, very clear.
Yes, and small details make it interesting. I drink tea with my colleagues. We talk and laugh. Tiny story, small feeling. Listeners remember that.
And you can add one question. Do you drink tea with your friends? Conversation flows naturally.
Exactly. Questions make it interactive. Short sentences plus a question, that's a beginner-friendly formula.
And if learners feel nervous, they can practice with simple sentences about their day first. I woke up, I ate breakfast, I went to work, step by step, slowly, naturally.
Yes, and tiny stories help confidence. Every day, just 1 or 2 sentences. Slowly, clearly, naturally. English becomes easier.
And practicing tiny mistakes helps too. I forgot my keys yesterday. I felt worried, but I found them later. Short sentences, story, feelings, realistic English.
Exactly. Life is full of small events. Learners can use these for practice. I walked my dog. He ran too fast. I laughed. Very simple, very natural.
Yes, and adding one question makes it interactive. Do you have a pet? One small story, feeling, question, beginners can do it easily.
And practicing tiny routines also teaches time words, like yesterday, today, in the morning, at night. Very easy to remember, very useful.
Yes, and listeners can repeat small stories every day. I woke up at 7, I drank coffee, I went for a walk, I felt calm. Short sentences, feelings, story, perfect practice.
Exactly, and learners should notice, you don't need long sentences. One story with feelings, small details, and one question. That's enough for real English.
Yes, and doing this every day slowly builds confidence. Small steps, tiny victories, real-life English.
And tiny stories also make English fun. I tried a new recipe. I burned it. I laughed. It was messy but funny. Short, clear, easy to say.
Yes, and small funny stories make English enjoyable, not boring, not forced, real life.
We can also practice talking about routines outside work, like cooking, exercising, shopping. I cooked lunch today. It was simple. I felt satisfied. Short sentences, feelings, story.
Yes, and learners can add one question. Do you like cooking? That keeps conversation flowing.
Exactly. One small story, one feeling, one question. That's the natural flow.
And if you feel stuck, just describe one small thing. A walk to the market, I bought vegetables, it was sunny. Very short, very clear, practice any day.
Yes, and tiny details make it more real. The sun was warm. I felt happy. One feeling word, very simple.
And learners can combine topics too. I cooked lunch, I watched a funny video, I talked to my friend. Short sentences, daily life, feelings, perfect beginner practice.
Yes, and small routines build confidence. Every day, just 1 or 2 sentences. Slowly, clearly, naturally. English becomes easier.
And practicing tiny mistakes helps too. I forgot my keys yesterday. I felt worried, but I found them later. Short sentences, story, feelings, realistic English.
Exactly. Life is full of small events. Learners can use these for practice. I walked my dog. He ran too fast. I laughed. Very simple, very natural.
Yes, and adding one question makes it interactive. Do you have a pet? One small story, feeling, question, beginners can do it easily.
And practicing tiny routines also teaches time words, like yesterday, today, in the morning, at night. Very easy to remember, very useful.
Yes, and listeners can repeat small stories every day. I woke up at 7, I drank coffee, I went for a walk. I felt calm. Short sentences, feelings, story, perfect practice.
Exactly. And learners should notice you don't need long sentences. One story with feelings, small details, and one question. That's enough for real English.
Yes, and doing this every day slowly builds confidence. Small steps, tiny victories, real-life English.
And tiny stories also make English fun. I tried a new recipe. I burned it. I laughed. It was messy but funny. Short, clear, easy to say.
Yes, and small funny stories make English enjoyable, not boring, not forced, real life.
We can also practice talking about routines outside work, like cooking, exercising, shopping. I cooked lunch today. It was simple. I felt satisfied. Short sentences, feelings, story.
Yes, and learners can add one question. Do you like cooking? That keeps conversation flowing.
Exactly. One small story, one feeling, one question. That's the natural flow.
And if you feel stuck, just describe one small thing. I walked to the market, I bought vegetables, it was sunny. Very short, very clear, practice any day.
Yes, and tiny details make it more real. The sun was warm. I felt happy. One feeling word, very simple.
And learners can combine topics too. I cooked lunch, I watched a funny video, I talked to my friend. Short sentences, daily life, feelings, perfect beginner practice.
Yes, and small routines build confidence. Every day, just 1 or 2 sentences. Slowly, clearly, naturally. English becomes easier.
And practicing tiny mistakes helps too. I forgot my keys yesterday. I felt worried, but I found them later. Short sentences, story, feelings, realistic English.
Exactly. Life is full of small events. Learners can use these for practice. I walked my dog. He ran too fast. I laughed. Very simple, very natural.
Yes, and adding one question makes it interactive. Do you have a pet? One small story, feeling, question, beginners can do it easily.
And practicing tiny routines also teaches time words, like yesterday, today, in the morning, at night. Very easy to remember, very useful.
Yes, and listeners can repeat small stories every day. I woke up at 7, I drank coffee, I went for a walk. I felt calm. Short sentences, feelings, story, perfect practice.
Exactly, and learners should notice you don't need long sentences. One story with feelings, small details, and one question. That's enough for real English.
Yes, and doing this every day slowly builds confidence. Small steps, tiny victories, real-life English.
And tiny stories also make English fun. I tried a new recipe. I burned it. I laughed. It was messy but funny. Short, clear, easy to say.
Yes, and small funny stories make English enjoyable, not boring, not forced, real life.
Let's talk about friends. I think everyone likes this topic. Thomas, how do you usually talk about your friends in English?
I keep it simple. I have a few close friends. We like spending time together. Short sentences, easy to remember.
Yes, and small stories make it interesting. Yesterday, we went to a park, we talked and laughed. It was fun. Short, clear, feelings included.
Exactly. And learners can add one question. Do you like meeting your friends? That keeps it interactive.
And tiny details are perfect for beginners. We played football, it was sunny, I felt happy. One feeling word. Very simple, very natural.
Yes, and hobbies are great too. I like painting. I paint in the evening. It makes me calm. Short sentences, feelings, story.
Hobbies are perfect for talking about yourself. Music, sports, reading, even small hobbies like collecting stamps or knitting, very easy to describe.
Yes, and learners can combine hobbies with friends. I play basketball with my friend. We laugh a lot. It is fun. Tiny story, feeling, short sentences.
Exactly. And you can add one question. Do you like sports? That's very simple, very natural, beginner friendly.
And weekend activities are another good topic. On weekends, I visit my parents. I cook with my mother. We talk a lot. Short sentences, story, feelings. Easy to practice.
Yes, and even little details make it feel real. On Sunday, I watched a movie. It was exciting. I felt relaxed. One story, one feeling. Listeners can repeat this at home.
Exactly. And small mistakes on weekends are good too. I tried to bake a cake. It burned. I laughed. Short sentences, feelings, story. Realistic English.
Yes, small mistakes are natural. They make your stories real, and learners don't need perfect grammar, just clarity and feelings.
And learners can repeat this formula. What happened, how I felt, small story, one question. Works for friends, hobbies, weekends, everything.
Yes, and slowly building confidence is key. Start with one sentence, then a tiny story, then one question. Every day, step by step.
And even small successes count. One sentence about yourself, one question to a friend, little story. It's progress.
Yes, learners can even practice aloud at home. I walked my dog, he ran fast, I laughed. Do you have a pet? Short, simple, natural English.
Exactly. And learners should not rush. Tiny pauses, short sentences, feelings, tiny stories. Very calm, very natural.
Also, talking about personal routines with friends is helpful. I call my friend every Friday, we share stories, it makes me happy. Short, clear, feelings, story.
Yes, and hobbies with friends are fun. I play chess with my friend. Sometimes I win, sometimes I lose. We laugh. Tiny stories, feelings, short sentences. Perfect practice.
Exactly. And listeners can combine topics too. I visited a park, I played football, I met my friend, we laughed. Short sentences, tiny stories, feelings, questions, all in one.
And it's okay if English is not perfect. Simple words, feelings, short stories, tiny pauses, that's real English.
Yes, and practicing small stories every day builds natural confidence. One sentence today, two sentences tomorrow, slowly, step by step.
Also, learners can prepare 3 or 4 tiny stories about friends or hobbies. Then, when someone asks, "Tell me about yourself," they have ideas ready.
Exactly. No need to memorize sentences, just have ideas. Short sentences, tiny stories, feelings, small questions, and English flows naturally.
And listeners can practice this while walking, cooking, or resting. One sentence, one story, one question. Slowly, clearly, calmly.
Yes, that's the beauty of real English. Tiny stories, feelings, small questions, step by step. Confidence grows naturally.
And don't forget, tiny mistakes are okay. I played football yesterday. I fell, I laughed. Short sentences, story, feelings. Natural English.
Exactly. And sharing these small stories is fun. I met my friend, we had coffee, it was sunny. We laughed. Tiny story, feelings, one question. Simple and natural.
Yes, listeners can practice this structure for friends, hobbies, weekends, daily life, everything. Step by step. Tiny victories, real life English.
And little stories make English interesting and memorable. I cooked pasta, I burned it a little, I laughed. Do you cook? Short sentences, story, feeling, question. Perfect beginner practice.
Exactly. Short sentences, tiny stories, feelings, questions. That's how learners start feeling confident talking about themselves.
Let's talk about traveling, even small trips. Thomas, how do you usually describe travel in English?
I keep it simple. I went to the park yesterday. It was sunny. I felt happy. Short sentences, story, feeling.
Yes, small trips are perfect for beginners. I went to the market, I bought vegetables, I felt satisfied. Tiny stories, feelings, very clear.
And you can add a question. Do you like going to the market? That keeps the conversation interactive.
Exactly, and small adventures at home or nearby work too. I tried a new cafe, the coffee was very good, I felt relaxed. Short sentences, tiny story, feelings.
Yes, and learners can describe little details. The cafe was small. The music was soft. I enjoyed it. Tiny details, feelings, very natural.
Shopping is also a great topic. I bought a shirt, it was blue, I felt happy. Short sentences, tiny story, one feeling word. Very easy.
And you can ask a question. Do you like shopping? One small story, feeling, question. Very simple.
Also, describing small adventures makes English lively. I walked in the park, I saw a dog, it ran to me, I laughed. Short sentences, tiny story, feeling, humor.
Yes, humor is very effective. I dropped my bag. I laughed. A stranger helped me. It felt nice. Tiny story, feeling, natural English.
And learners can practice talking to strangers in simple English. Excuse me, where is the bus stop? Short, clear, polite, real English.
Yes, and if someone replies, you can add a tiny story. Thank you. Yesterday I got lost. It was confusing, but I found my way. Short sentences, feelings, story.
Exactly. Small adventures, small mistakes, small interactions, perfect for beginners. One sentence, story, feeling, question.
And describing what you see is also good practice. I see a bird. It is singing. I feel calm. Short sentences, story, feelings, very natural.
Yes, and learners can repeat this at home. I see a tree. It is tall. I feel happy. Tiny sentences, tiny story, one feeling word. Very simple.
Even a tiny walk can give practice. I walked to the shop. I bought tea. It was warm. I felt relaxed. Short sentences, story, feelings, question. Do you like tea?
Yes, and tiny conversations with strangers are also great practice. Excuse me, can you help me? Thank you. Very short, very clear, very real.
And you can add one story about it. A stranger helped me yesterday. I felt grateful. Short sentences, feelings, story, natural English.
Exactly. Small interactions, tiny stories, one feeling word, perfect for beginners. Step by step, slowly, clearly, confidently.
And learners can combine travel, shopping, and adventures in one story. I walked to the park. I bought coffee. I saw a dog. I laughed. I felt happy. Short sentences, tiny story, feelings, one question.
Yes, perfect. And tiny humor is always welcome. I spilled my coffee. I laughed. A bird tried to drink it too. Short sentences, tiny story, feelings, very natural.
Exactly, step by step. Tiny stories, short sentences, feelings, one question. That's real English practice about yourself and your life.
And doing this every day builds confidence naturally. One sentence today, one story tomorrow. step by step, slowly, calmly, confidently.
Yes, and learners should remember perfection is not the goal. Feeling, clarity, tiny stories, one question. That's enough for real English.
Exactly. And listeners can try small adventures every day. Walking, shopping, talking to strangers, noticing things. Tiny stories, feelings, one question. Slowly, naturally.
Yes, and tiny successes every day make learners confident. One story today, two tomorrow, step by step, natural English.
And little details always make it interesting. The sky was blue. The sun was warm. I felt happy. Short sentences, tiny story, feeling, simple, clear, real.
Yes, and learners can repeat these structures for travel, shopping, small adventures, even daily life, step by step, tiny stories, feelings, one question.
Exactly. That's the heart of natural English. Short sentences, tiny stories, feelings, questions, slowly, clearly, confidently. Let's talk about the future. Small plans, big dreams. Thomas, how do you usually talk about your plans in English?
I like to keep it simple. I want to learn photography. I will try next weekend. Short sentences, clear, easy to remember.
Yes, short sentences, tiny story, one feeling. That's perfect. You can also add why. I want to learn photography. I love taking pictures. It makes me happy. One feeling word, very natural.
Exactly. And learners can start with one small plan every day. Today, I will cook dinner. I hope it turns out well. Short sentences, story, feelings, easy to practice.
Yes, and tiny steps make big dreams easier. I want to travel to another city. I will save money. I feel excited. One story, one feeling, very simple.
And asking a question is natural. Do you have any plans this week? One story, feeling, question, beginner-friendly conversation.
Exactly. And learners can talk about personal growth too. I want to speak English better. I will practice every day. I feel motivated. Short sentences, story, feeling, very clear.
Yes, and tiny achievements matter. I spoke 3 sentences in English today. I felt proud. Short sentences, story, feeling, small success.
And learners can describe emotions easily. I felt happy, nervous, excited, or relaxed. One feeling word, short sentences.
Perfect. That's the heart of natural English about yourself. Short sentences, tiny stories, feelings, questions, step by step, small victories. Calm, confident, real English. Let's talk about social situations, like meeting new people. Thomas, how do you usually start a conversation with someone you don't know?
I keep it simple. Hi, I'm Thomas. How are you? Short sentences, clear, easy to remember.
Yes, short sentences, friendly tone, tiny story, even one feeling word can help. Hi, I'm Anna. I'm happy to meet you. Small words, very natural.
Exactly. And learners can add small questions to keep conversation flowing. Do you live here? Do you like this place? Short, simple, interactive.
And giving opinions politely is important. I like this cafe. It is cozy. What do you think? One story, one feeling, one question. Very simple.
Yes, and learners can also say dislikes politely. I don't like spicy food. It makes me feel uncomfortable. Do you like spicy food? Short sentences, feelings, one question, beginner friendly.
Exactly. And combining likes, dislikes, and experiences is easy. I like reading books. I enjoy mystery stories. What is your favorite book? Tiny story, feeling, question, natural English.
And learners can practice small daily situations. I bought a new shirt. I like the color. It makes me feel happy. Do you like shopping? Short sentences, story, feeling, one question.
Yes, and sharing small stories about experiences builds confidence. I went to the park yesterday. It was sunny. I felt relaxed. Have you been to the park recently?
short sentences, tiny story, feeling, question.
And it's okay to add tiny humor. I tried cooking pasta. I burned it. I laughed. Have you ever burned your food? Short sentences, feelings, story, question. Very natural.
Exactly, and expressing ideas politely is also helpful. I think this movie is interesting. What do you think? One sentence, opinion, one question. Very simple.
Yes, and learners can repeat small structures for daily practice. I feel happy today. I met a friend. We laughed. Do you feel happy today? Short sentences, tiny story, feeling, question. Perfect for beginners.
And small conversations about hobbies work too. I like painting. It relaxes me. What do you like to do in your free time? Tiny story, feelings, one question. Simple, natural.
Exactly. And learners can practice giving opinions about places. I like this park. It is quiet. Do you like this park? Short sentences, tiny story, feeling, question. Real English.
Yes, and talking about experiences helps too. I went shopping today. It was busy. I felt a little tired. How about you? Short sentences, tiny story, feeling, question. Beginner friendly.
And learners can add one more feeling word to make it real. I felt happy, relaxed, excited, or nervous. Tiny stories, feelings, short sentences, simple, clear, natural.
Exactly. And practicing short conversations every day builds confidence. One sentence today, one tiny story tomorrow, step by step, slowly, naturally.
Yes, and learners can combine topics, hobbies, travel, routines, friends, short sentences, tiny stories, feelings, one question, natural English.
And tiny pauses help too. Don't rush. I walked to the cafe. I drank coffee. I felt relaxed. Have you been to a cafe recently? Short sentences, tiny story, feeling, question. Calm and natural.
Yes, and repeating these simple structures every day helps learners feel confident talking about themselves, step by step, slowly, clearly, naturally.
Exactly. Small sentences, tiny stories, feelings, questions, everyday situations, little successes. That's the heart of real English about yourself.
Yes, and learners can practice with friends, family, or even alone.
And asking for advice politely is important too. I want to improve my English. Can you help me? Short, clear. Story, feeling, question. Very simple.
Yes, and learners can describe their feelings after trying something new. I tried speaking to a stranger. I felt nervous. I felt proud afterwards. Tiny story, feelings, short sentences, real English.
Exactly. And tiny successes every day build confidence. One sentence today, one story tomorrow, step by step, slowly, naturally.
And learners should remember, perfection is not important. Tiny stories, feelings, one question, clarity, step by step. That's real English.
Yes, and little stories about emotions, advice, experiences, mistakes all help learners speak naturally, step by step, small victories, calm, confident, real.
And practicing tiny interactive conversations every day is very helpful. One story, one feeling, one question, gradually, confidently, naturally.
Exactly. And tiny pauses, short sentences, feelings, small stories all make English real, easy, and enjoyable. Step by step, daily, little successes. Confidence grows naturally.
Yes, and listeners can repeat these structures for any situation: strangers, friends, work, hobbies, travel, short sentences, tiny stories, feelings, one question, real English.
Perfect. That's the heart of natural English conversation. Step by step. Small stories, feelings, questions, calm, clear, confident, beginner friendly, real life practice. Thomas, after all these stories, I feel like we've traveled through a whole week of life in English.
Yes. One morning, one walk, one friend, one little adventure, and suddenly a whole day, a whole week, all in tiny stories.
Exactly. And the beauty is each small story, each feeling, each question, that's real English. Not perfect, not long, just natural, real, calm, and confident.
Yes, and learners can see that it's okay to start small. One sentence, one feeling, one story, one question, step by step, day by day.
And tiny mistakes, tiny humor, little pauses, all part of the story, part of the learning, part of real life.
Exactly. And every day, every small success builds confidence, slowly, naturally, until English feels like a part of life, like talking about yourself, sharing experiences, laughing, feeling, connecting.
Yes, and the listener can take any topic, friends, hobbies, travel, work, and make tiny stories, feelings, one question, and suddenly English flows naturally.
And learners can do this anywhere, walking, cooking, resting. Tiny sentences, tiny stories, tiny victories, day by day, step by step, very calm, very real, very confident.
Exactly. And slowly, naturally, English becomes your friend, a way to share yourself, a way to connect with others, a way to feel proud, excited, and happy. Yes, short, clear sentences. And you can add a tiny story, like, yesterday I helped a client. It was challenging, but I felt proud. One feeling word makes it real.
Exactly. And learners can start like this. One sentence about what they do, one small story, one feeling, then maybe one question.
Yes, for example, I am a teacher. I teach English. I enjoy seeing my students smile. What do you do? Simple, natural, interactive.
And mistakes at work or school are great topics too. They're real. I made a mistake in my report yesterday. I felt nervous, but I fixed it. Short sentences, feelings, very practical.
Yes, honesty makes English more natural. We all make mistakes, and learners can share them without fear. Short sentences, feelings, tiny story, perfect practice.
Also, talking about daily routines at work or school is very helpful. I wake up at 7, I eat breakfast, I go to work, I meet my colleagues. Very short, very clear.
Yes, and small details make it interesting. I drink tea with my colleagues. We talk and laugh. Tiny story, small feeling. Listeners remember that.
And you can add one question. Do you drink tea with your friends? Conversation flows naturally.
Exactly. Questions make it interactive. Short sentences plus a question, that's a beginner-friendly formula.
And if learners feel nervous, they can practice with simple sentences about their day first. I woke up, I ate breakfast, I went to work, step by step, slowly, naturally.
Yes, and tiny stories help confidence. Every day, just one or two sentences. Slowly, clearly, naturally. English becomes easier.
And practicing tiny mistakes helps too. I forgot my keys yesterday. I felt worried, but I found them later. Short sentences, story, feelings, realistic English.
Exactly. Life is full of small events. Learners can use these for practice. I walked my dog. He ran too fast. I laughed. Very simple, very natural.
Yes, and adding one question makes it interactive. Do you have a pet? One small story, feeling, question, beginners can do it easily.
And practicing tiny routines also teaches time words, like yesterday, today, in the morning, at night. Very easy to remember, very useful.
Yes, and listeners can repeat small stories every day. I woke up at 7, I drank coffee, I went for a walk, I felt calm. Short sentences, feelings, story, perfect practice.
Exactly, and learners should notice, you don't need long sentences. One story with feelings, small details, and one question. That's enough for real English.
Yes, and doing this every day slowly builds confidence. Small steps, tiny victories, real-life English.
And tiny stories also make English fun. I tried a new recipe. I burned it. I laughed. It was messy but funny. Short, clear, easy to say.
Yes, and small funny stories make